Hi, I'm James Shillinglaw, and here we are again with Jeff Miller, who is our travel law insider and a longtime travel law specialist. He teaches law at colleges. He has a firm, and he's been around. Jeff, you and I have known each other for well over 25 years, I know.
I think it's 30 years.
Oh my God, we're dating it by this 30 years. Well, you usually have a column in Insider Travel Report. You see, I'm getting old. I'm started to say my old publications, but we thought we'd give you, our viewers, a chance to see him live and to talk about some of the issues that the COVID-19 virus, especially the travel law issues, how it's affected those. And we had a part one of this interview was actually on Thursday, so yesterday. And now we have part two. And part one, we looked at things like cancellation policies, refunds, future cruise credits, things like that. Part two, we're going to take a little more freewheeling attitude, and we're going to look at travel insurance, online travel agency versus travel advisor bookings, and other issues that the COVID pandemic has affected in terms of travel overall and travel law further. You're going to find out all that and more on Insider Travel Report. Now, Jeff, first of all, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for asking.
Yeah,
I'm still in Maryland.
You're still in Maryland. There you go. And I hear you're having just groups of your family coming in. You know, you're very nice to have all your family coming in over and over again, right?
Well, we like to see our children and grandchildren. Our trips out west were canceled, so they're coming east.
There you go. Well, I'm glad they're coming east. But anyway, today we wanted to take a look at some of the major issues that we didn't talk about the other day. First of all, travel insurance, which is obviously a major thing, especially during COVID-19. A lot of people didn't know. Now, do travel insurance companies even cover trips disrupted by COVID?
Generally, no.
Okay.
And now many of the policies specifically exclude that or other viruses.
Now, are they developing such coverage, or is COVID regarded as just, an event or a temporary illness?
I think it's more of an event. I don't see them covering it. I think the exposure is enormous. And of course, when you deal with insurance, you deal with risk and reward. I don't see them covering COVID and actually specifically excluding that and other viruses now.
No, that's interesting. Did it ever cover any viruses at all? I mean, like the old
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah, interesting. Now, because of this, should a travel advisor still have a client pay for travel insurance in full for a future?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, for a future trip. When should a travel advisor have a client pay for travel insurance?
Okay. Well, this is where maybe it'll be some good advice for your readers, because most people pay for travel insurance within a certain number of days of the deposit so that you have the pre-existing coverage protection. But if you cancel, generally, you're not getting your insurance back. There are some exceptions with COVID. Some of the companies did other things. But what you should do, let's suppose I'm going on a cruise and my deposit is $1,000. I should take out the insurance for $1,000. And when I make final payment a year later, 18 months later, 6 months later, I pay the balance. Because that way I'm protected. If the trip cancels, I'm only in for the insurance to protect the deposit, but that protects me for the pre-existing conditions.
Okay.
I got that advice from a travel advisor 30 years ago that's still my travel advisor, and I continue to follow it.
So that is good advice in normal times to keep right?
And I've suggested that to people, and they look at me like I am from outer space. And they realize, well, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, so that's what we should do normally, and obviously in this age of COVID, although right now a lot of people aren't traveling, so they're not taking out travel insurance. Now, are there other legal implications on travel insurance in this new age of COVID?
Yeah, the problem that an agent has, I go to an agent and I say, well, I want to take out travel insurance, and I say, well, does it cover something like COVID-19? Most travel advisors are salespeople. They're marketing people. They want to please their client. And unfortunately, many of them will say yes when the correct answer is, I don't know, I can check, or I can have you check directly with the company, whatever you prefer. you don't want to give them an answer that says I have coverage, and then you find out you don't have coverage, because that raises liability issues for the travel agency community.
Well, and then at the beginning of this interview, you said most of these policies don't cover COVID.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
but we have some. I mean, you can have travel advisors that are new to the industry, not experienced in the industry. They could be answering questions or didn't get the proper training from their agencies, and they're answering questions that they don't know the answer to, but they want to make the sale.
now let's talk a little bit about disclaimers. And I don't know, we talked yesterday about COVID waivers, but within accepting of travel insurance, because what travel advisors often do is, if somebody doesn't want travel insurance, they say, look, you got to check this box or sign this that I declined. Is there something similar going on now where they have to decide? You still obviously are going to recommend having your client sign a disclaimer, correct?
Yes, you mean a consumer disclosure notice.
I'm sorry. There you go. That's why we have you on here, because you got the legal terminology, and I should know that, having edited many of your columns on this.
But the real risk is not only with the insurance, but let's suppose some policies, it's between 7 and 15 days, depending on the company, that you have to take the policy to have the pre-existing coverage, which is very important the older you get, obviously. Because it's not just you, it's also family members if they get ill. So the problem is, you send me the information, and 20 days later, I send you back a check or a credit card to pay for it. Well, you got to be set up. The agency has to be set up to advise the person, well, we got your acknowledgement that you want the insurance, but be aware you've waived the pre-existing coverage. And most agencies are not set up that way. And that's most of the claims against travel agencies that I've seen in recent years revolve around that issue. You have to be established to say, we need this back within 7 to 15 days. And if it comes in after that, your staff has to be trained to notify the client immediately. Do you still want it? You don't have pre-existing coverage. Now, the way around that, if you're far out, the agency will cancel the booking and rebook it, assuming there's no other changes. But again, I've seen a lot of issues that revolve right around that fact. And the agent has liability. If you sell me insurance and you don't tell me that I've waived the pre-existing conditions and I have a problem, guess what? You're going to get sued. That's what's going to happen.
Well, then that's so obviously good advice there on what to do in that case. Now, another insurance-related thing is, are you think more people are going to sign up for so-called medical evacuation policies?
Yes.
And some insurance companies do have these as another service, but they're actually special companies too. But obviously, if you get COVID or any other disease and you don't want to be treated wherever you are in the world, a medical evacuation policy is a great thing to have.
Yeah, no, in a typical travel insurance policy, there will be some medical evacuation coverage. Mm-hmm. The difference between that and a medical evacuation company is the latter is not an insurance company. It's not held out as insurance. They're private entities that operate their own fleet of medical planes. There's 3 or 4 that are 100% legitimate, been in business a long time, have a great track record, and you can get it for the year. In other words, I don't have to be on a trip. I may be more than 50 miles from my residence in Maryland, and if I need to be medically evacuated home, that will cover me. Most of them say within 50 to 100 miles away from your residence. So it's not just when you're traveling. You could be visiting family or visiting friends or just taking a road trip someplace. You have coverage. And for a person even my age, it's not expensive, and it's commissionable to travel advisors. And it's also through a lot of different affinity groups, you can get discounts. AARP offers it. AAA offers a discount. They don't offer the policy, but they have discounts that they get you as a member. And travel advisors, it's commissionable. I've had it for years.
Well, it's a great policy, and I will have to admit I never have gotten it, and I've always said, yeah, we should get that. One of my associates, a reporter I had, was down in Panama once, and he had something that was pretty serious, and he ended up, and just by chance, he had done a travel insurance story, and they convinced him to take out the MedVac policy for a couple $100 a year or whatever it was.
And that's all it is.
Yeah, it's all it is. And he was evacuated from Panama to Florida, and it was amazing. And he got obviously I think the hospital in Panama was pretty good, but they also recommended if he wanted to go to Miami, he could do that, and he did, and it helped him, and he survived, and it was and of course I told him he had to write a column about it afterwards, so that was it. So
for
that
somebody
was,
my age, for my Roberta and I, it's less than 300 hours a year.
yeah, it's a no-brainer to get, and I probably don't have a brain because I still don't have it. So we shall see about that one. When I do start to travel again, I'm going to look into it. Now, another part, it's not travel insurance, but it's actually errors and omission insurance. And now, how is COVID-19 crisis, is it going to affect, does it affect errors and omissions insurance for travel agencies?
In my experience, and I've only had a couple of clients ask me this question, but I don't think COVID-19 is covered under a typical travel agency errors and omissions policy, which is, of course, the malpractice policy for the travel advisor. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's covered. And now my understanding is it's specifically excluded.
Wow. Because, these days, a travel advisor has to be almost have a degree in geography and know every policy of every state in every country, because if you are recommending a country that you go to travel to, and then all of a sudden they put in or have a 14-day quarantine or have other things, and you got to have you need testing, whatever. I just was on a call with Jamaica, and you can go to Jamaica now, but you have to have either some kind of proof that you've just recently had a COVID test, or you have to get the COVID test there at the airport, which apparently can be done quickly, and you quarantine in your resort until you get the results. Now, but there's so many different policies of governments and states that and so you as an agent recommend something, and then somebody could come back and say, well, you recommended this, and I'm going to sue you for the fact that I couldn't get through.
And that's exactly why the errors and omissions carriers don't want to cover it.
That is amazing, because, they do have other things that maybe travel advisors recommend, and maybe it is covered.
A lot of travel advisors will still say, look, I don't know the answer because this is changing every hour, but here's the website for that country or our State Department or whatever it is, and refer them that way and try to protect themselves.
So now,
keep in mind, if I get sued, even if there's no coverage for COVID, but you sue me, the insurance company has to defend me. But if there's a judgment, they don't have to pay it.
Right. So, for example, I can't keep track of my own state. New York State has now 35 states that they now have quarantine policies on. This is actually hindering even a resurgence of domestic travel, because people don't know where they can travel to without having to quarantine.
And that's why it's going to be a long time till this industry comes back.
Yeah, well, unless when and if there is a vaccine, we shall see. But we wanted to switch to another topic. What's happening to the online travel agency world, OTAs versus traditional travel advisors. What has happened to bookings that have been made in this COVID era with online travel agencies? What kind of challenges have customers had?
I think consumers or travelers have had a lot of problems, because most instances are dealing through the internet. They may be actually talking to somebody if there's an issue or getting an email back, but you don't have a personal relationship. I've been using the same travel advisor agency since 1984. So I have a personal relationship with them. Sometimes I'm traveling a lot. Sometimes I'm not traveling at all. They're not booking my Southwest tickets, obviously. I'm booking those direct now. But you have a relationship. So the problem that I've seen with people, and again, I think I mentioned in the first session, I probably dealt with 30 or 35 people on a pro bono basis, not representing them, but just trying to give them advice. And almost every claim that was involved came through the internet, and that, they either look for the lowest price or it was a deal. And it turns out not to be a deal, because they're having trouble getting their money back. In some cases, the tour operators say, well, we're not giving you money back at all, even though there's nothing in their terms and conditions that would prohibit that. But I teach at Florida Atlantic University in their hospitality program, and I ask the students in my 4 classes every semester, the first day of class, can I get a better travel by online or through a retail travel agent? And 100% of them will say online. And by the end of the semester, they've changed their views.
Well, that's the problem is, and the propaganda that OTAs put out starting in the 2000s, that you could do it through them and get a great deal, has just been, still is inculcated in the culture, especially younger people. I get that all the time, and I just I counter that just as you do. And I said, that's not correct. Now, but in terms of just the basics of people who book through OTAs during this COVID period, have they been able to get refunds? Have OTAs been responsive at all, depending on their size? I mean,
I'm only seeing, of course, either what I see personally or what I hear from talking to other people that are involved in this industry. My experience it's been very difficult. I think I used the example. I know one of the people I'm still dealing with. I actually just filled out a small claim form. They're going to sue an airline directly, but they were dealing with through an online travel agency who was basically a consolidator, but an agent or a sub-agent of a major U.S. airline. And they said, well, we're not giving you your money back. You've already paid us. We're actually going to we'll rebook you into the future with a $125 fee, of all things. And I said to the person, just ignore them and just sue the carrier. Because under DOT regulations, if the carrier cancels the flight, there's no issue. You're entitled to your money back regardless of how it was issued.
Right.
And I think with tour operators, they've been terrible online. They don't want to give back any money at all. And the problem is they probably don't have it because they've already passed it on to their suppliers. And even if they gave me a credit, are they going to be around in a year or 2 years when I want to use it? No, that's the answer.
Now, there's a question we were going to do later, but this is a pretty good time to do it. How has the COVID-19 crisis really once again proven the value of sort of a traditional travel advisor versus, say, an OTA or booking directly? I mean, I used to say it's sad that it takes a crisis to prove the value of a good travel advisors. But in your view, how does that value, once we get all over this, can travel advisors now say, look, this is what I can do versus what the other guys can do?
I think it absolutely enhances the value of a travel advisor. Keeping in mind, you always have a segment of the population that's going to look for the cheapest deal or least expensive deal, and they're going to get what they pay for in a lot of instances. But I think it enhances the value of a travel advisor as a travel professional. And you pick those folks like you pick any other professional, a lawyer, a doctor, a dentist, an insurance agent, a real estate agent. I think it enhances that. And I think more and more people, even millennials, from what the research has shown, or realize the value of a travel advisor.
No, and that's good for things, except then people have short memories and they forget, like, 9/11, of course, when you had a problem, you were stranded somewhere in the world, you had a travel advisor back who was working to get you home. And the same happened here with COVID-19, where your trips were canceled. And you had, if you booked through a travel advisor, someone who was in your corner trying to get you either a refund or a future credit or something, and was managing the whole thing. Because then beyond the product you're going on, you had to get there and you had maybe hotel reservations and everything else. Who was going to do that? And that was the travel advisor.
Oh, absolutely. And we could go back in history. We both have been around a long time. The blackout in the Northeast.
Yep.
We go back in history. But I mean, let me give you an example with car rentals. I talked to some people who booked car rentals through online travel agencies, totally non-refundable. So they couldn't go, but they didn't get their money back. What don't you understand is non-refundable. You paid us, you didn't show up, that's your problem.
Right.
Even the major car rental companies that had non-refundable fees gave the money back.
Right.
But the online travel agencies that had booked it through their own relationships did not.
That's exactly, because they have relationships too. And that's the other thing is a lot of people forget travel advisors have pretty good relationships with a large number of travel suppliers, and they can do things often that OTAs and doing direct you cannot do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's look at some of the other issues, sort of a grab bag of stuff that we looked at the other, how the COVID pandemic will affect both travel overall and travel law further. One of the things, you mentioned to me that travelers are going to start to question what they call fee for service in hotels. This is something they were starting to question, but I kept seeing a surge in it, is resort fees. Often in downtown cities, or it's like, wait a minute, this isn't a resort, but they still call it a resort fee or some add-on, which covered essentially internet maybe and some other things and unnamed services. So, but all of a sudden you had tacked onto your bill $30 or $40. Do you think that this, and then of course we have fees on board cruise ships, and then obviously we know all about the airline fees. Do you think there's going to be a sort of a consumers are going to start to rebel against these fees again?
I think they are. I think knowledgeable consumers are going to say, look, I booked a hotel room. Why when I get to the very bottom, you disclose a $35 or $40 resort fee? Obviously, we know why they do that, because you're searching the internet, many people, and they're looking at a price. And it turns out that the price is more when you get to the bottom and they add the fee in. I think people are going to start to challenge that. I think people are going to challenge the fee for service on the cruise industry, which is why they had a record year in 2019, because you pay for everything. We know about the airline industry, of course, that they have been charging for everything for years.
Yeah, but the airline industry, that's how they were making any money, I think, was the fees they put on, right?
That and the credit cards, yeah.
That and the credit cards, okay, because that, we've sort of become not accepting of it, but it's, airlines put in those fees, and nobody said anything, and all of a sudden we're stuck with it. And there's even a category in the ARC reports that says airline fees, and those.
Well, it's even a carrier like Southwest, which I typically fly 60 to 70 times a year. I mean, it's deceptive, because if you don't pay for their early boarding, which is between $15 and $30 now, you're going to be in a middle seat.
Right. Well, that's the
truth.
So
they don't charge for baggage, and they don't have seat assignments. But if you don't pay that extra fee, you're going to be in a middle seat.
Yeah, well, then at least you have that, because there's now even some fees just to get an assigned seat with some cases. I know British Airways and I remember on the Virgin once, I think it may still be the case, where suddenly I realized I don't really have a seat until I pay more money. And I was thought, wait a minute here. I for my fare, I don't even get an assigned seat. I mean, what is going on there?
That's very common, particularly in the more aggressive, smaller carriers.
Yeah, well, this was a large carrier going internationally, and I know this is a couple of years ago, but I do agree. I mean, the question is, what can we do about it? I have seen movement in the cruise lines, and we were talking about this earlier in the contemporary, the mass market, where I was been advocating for a long time they should go towards the more all-inclusive model, and some have put in packages that include a lot of different things, like drinks and things like that make it so you're paying one price up front, and you don't get at the end, you don't get that bill that's probably twice what you paid for the fare to get on the ship, which is the model. You suddenly get that bill and you realize, oh my God, how did I do all that? And now it would seem that customers don't want to be surprised like that.
Well, why would you go on a cruise and pay $10 to go to Johnny Rockets for a hamburger?
That's true. That's
for
true.
A meal.
Yeah.
It's not like you're going to starve on the cruise ship.
Yeah. Well, it is, and that has been the model, and I've been trying to talk with the cruise lines about maybe rethinking. Some are doing that, but not enough. And of course, now as we restart, what that's going to look like is still anybody's guess. But let's move to something else here. You said that a lot of travelers are going to not sign up or maybe discard their travel affinity cards because right now they're paying another fee to get benefits that they might not use. What's going on there?
I think that's actually occurring if you read some of the industry publications from the financial industry. Some of these cards cost $400 or $500 a year. It gets you lounge memberships. It may get you an upgrade. It gets you extra points. It may get you a meal. Things like that. Well, if you're not traveling, what do you need it for? So what am I paying $400 or $300 for that service when I'm not traveling? I'll cancel it if I decide I'm going to travel a lot in the future. I could get it back. But I think you're going to see on the corporate side, it's going to be a long time till it comes back. Anybody I've talked to that either is a traveler or in the travel business or in the corporate world, they're not traveling. And there's no plans to say, oh, we're going to start traveling December 1st or January 1st. These folks are not traveling internationally particularly, and that's where the money is, of course, for the airlines. It's going to be a long, long road back.
Yeah, well, and again, there's so many. They're all pushing their credit cards like, out of style. You can't board a flight now, for example, without getting a credit card promotion with the offer.
So then you're one of 100 anyway.
Yeah. So it's I have fallen victim to that a few times because I say, why not? I fly this airline a lot. And I've done it. And then I said, wait a minute, I don't need all these credit cards. So, and affinity cards. And, I don't really want to be affinity with anyone, just myself, really, to be honest with you. But people do them. And as you said, maybe this trend is going to reverse itself. But let's see. You also mentioned something, and you're probably seeing that, given that you're an educator and teach travel law at Florida Atlantic. I think you said to me that there's a danger here that travel, because it really is one of the sectors of the economy that's really been hit hard, will really lose maybe its talent pool of young people coming into the industry because they'd see less opportunity. That's what you're thinking right now?
I think so. I just saw a statistic. I think the number was 300,000 people in South Florida who are unemployed just from the restaurant, hotel related businesses. And I don't think those jobs are coming back, if ever.
And you said that maybe fewer people might be signing up for degrees or programs for travel and tourism education, right?
Yes, every state university in Florida has a travel and tourism program, most of them through a doctorate program. I think you're going to see a slowdown in that dramatically as students say, well, there's no jobs. And we've had there's always jobs available in Florida for really not just entry level, but all kinds of jobs with decent paying salaries. That's not going to happen. That's gone. And it's not coming back anytime fast.
No, that's a shame, because was, and may someday still be, an area that is one of the biggest industries in the world, and there's a lot of opportunity in normal times.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I mean, if you think about meeting planners, both of my daughters have degrees in travel and tourism. My oldest daughter has a master's in that from UF. Meeting planners, who's holding meetings? Yeah,
well, I think, and that leads into another discussion, corporate travel and meetings. We all talk, these are two sectors that really, we all think, I mean, we're focused mostly on leisure travel here, but for Insider Travel Report, but corporate travel and meetings and incentive travel are some of the pillars of travel, and where companies make an awful lot of money. But this, I mean, no one even has a prediction about when this will come. When will we see our next meeting? We don't even, every single travel agency meeting, travel industry meeting has been canceled this year.
And would you go even if it was scheduled?
Well, I'm a little crazy, so I probably...
Well, you would, because you're covering it. But I mean, think about it. Would you attend it? I don't know.
It depends if the meeting was worthwhile. I mean, obviously, if a lot of people think that way and they don't show up, it becomes less worthwhile. But if it's a case, I do know, most of us are sort of nomads in this business, and we go from meeting to meeting, whether you're a supplier or a journalist, and you see all your friends and you see people and you network. It's our social life in a way, but it's also our business life. So I guess a lot of us would, but right now I can count on less than one hand the number of meetings that are scheduled for the remainder of the year, and those are still in danger of being canceled.
Well, yeah, I think there's going to be less and less meetings as we go into the future. We saw that after 9/11, but it came back.
Yeah. Well, that's before everybody had talked about things like, here we are on a Zoom interview, and there are other services like that, and everybody worried that would happen. It did not happen. But this time around, maybe it will, because even companies, they may put in policies that dictate that they can't, people can't travel. And I've heard that from actual travel companies now, that travel companies, some very well-known ones, are barring their own corporate travel.
They don't want the risk associated with it.
That's the challenge.
And I'm teaching remotely. All my courses in the fall are being taught.
Yeah, well, and you can do it, although, obviously it would be better. But, you and I both end up seeing each other at travel industry conferences, and you do seminars with people, and that's a great feature. But will we ever see that again?
Hard to say, but I don't think so.
Okay, well, I do hope that some live conferences do get a chance to get back. The only one that I know right now is still on schedule that I would attend, granted, if Europe lets me in, is the International Luxury Travel Market in Cannes at the beginning of December. But pretty much, and actually World Travel Market, last I looked, was still a go. I haven't gone to that a number of years, but the answer from my perspective is I'll probably go to those if I'm allowed to get into Europe and the UK. That's a big thing. To have to quarantine for 14 days is just not before I
Not
do that.
feasible, yeah.
Not feasible. But and then I guess the last question I wanted to talk to you about is what's going to happen to the structure of the travel agency business today, where we have consortiums, co-ops, marketing networks, and of course host travel agencies, some large ones, all being impacted at this point. And we probably will absolutely see the number of travel agencies and travel advisors go down. And then, of course, these organizations, the big ones, are at this point seeing very few, if little, revenue. And a lot of them have canceled their meetings, and we're just waiting to see how they emerge and how they will be restructured. What's your view of what overall the structure of the travel agency business will look like?
Okay, keeping in mind when the meetings are canceled, that's a huge source of revenue for I use the word consortiums, but I'm talking about all these types of groups, because
Right.
you have suppliers that pay to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So you've lost that revenue, which supports their overhead. I think it's a ripple effect. You have less travel advisors, clearly, and I think you'll therefore, can a host agency survive with only 200 hosting 200 instead of 500? Yeah, but then they got less of a deal with this cruise line or this airline or this tour operator. So it's a ripple effect. I think you're going to see a lot of fallout there. And I think you'll see some of the, I use the word consortiums again, but I'm using it generically. I think you're going to see some of those fold. I think some of the franchise operations will shrink dramatically or merge together. We have some consortiums that are privately held, some are member-owned. So it depends what the members or what the individuals that own the consortiums are willing to do and how long they're willing to hold on. But I think you're going to see a shrinkage. Now, if you can hold on and the industry comes back, so there's less competition, that puts you in a better position 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road, but you got to survive that long.
That's true. Yeah. And what do you think it happens? I mean, obviously, in the last 20, 25 years, we've seen this host agency, independent contractor model really become, one of the dominant forms of organization that we have in the industry. What is going to happen to that host agency independent? You said, obviously, the host agency might not have 500, they might have 200. I mean, we do have some hosts now that have 3,000. And then it goes on down from there. But almost every travel agency in the country, to some degree, is a host agency. They have independent contractors. Some are prevalent. That's what they have only. They don't have any in-house travel advisors. They just, market and give them marketing and technology and training. But what do you think is going to happen to that model?
Well, I think it's going to disintegrate, because I think you're going to see a lot of the people that are now the independent contractors realize, well, I can't make a living doing this. Now, some people are in it just to get the free travel. Most people aren't. For many years, we know that a lot of people got in for that. But if I can't make a living doing this, or I can't supplement my family's income doing this, or there's too many headaches dealing with COVID or similar activities, what am I doing this for? Let me find something else. And the more of those people that leave, the less people for the host agency or the less consortiums. So I think it's going to shrink. I think the travel advisor industry is going to shrink.
Okay.
Now, there'll still be some major players out there, but even a lot of these major players still do a big corporate business. I mean, some of the big consortiums have a big corporate practice. They're going to lose that revenue. I mean, we both know they're getting, commissions in air, which other people don't get. You're going to lose that. If I'm not traveling, there's no commissions. And some of these companies have enormous overhead.
Yeah.
They have lots and lots of highly qualified people. And how long can you keep paying them?
Well, in some cases they aren't. I know some of the consortium have been really downsizing dramatically, and in some cases, 50% or more of the staff has been cut. So that's an issue. But it's ironic because earlier we were saying that the value of a travel advisor once again is being demonstrated, and yet we may see a shrinkage of travel advisors.
Because you got to be able to make a living doing it. Assuming you're there to make a living, it's not just as a game. You got to be able to make a living, and that's the issue.
Yeah, no, you're right. And the issue, of course, is whoever emerges from that may be in a better position because they will have survived this, just
Absolutely.
as they have survived 9/11 or the commission cuts or all of the other calamities that have beset the travel agency business. So if you emerge from this, and you may be in the catbird seat to start making some money.
Well, particularly with the consortiums, I could see some agencies jumping consortiums, which of course has happened in the past, but I could see a movement doing that. And I could see at least one of the major consortiums going under.
Yeah, or getting merged in with another one.
Right.
We did have an era of consolidation of consortium, a big era towards the end of the 90s, the early 2000s.
The B.com.
Yeah, well, we actually used to meet at vacation.com, and of course that the company that has resulted in that ended up becoming Travel Leaders, and now I think I can't remember the name of the new name. I feel badly because I just interviewed him early in this crisis, J.D. O'Hara, but they just renamed that again, although Travel Leaders Network is still what the inheritor of the vacation.com brand is definitely still around and is probably the largest of the consortium at this point.
And a huge corporate presence.
And a absolutely huge corporate presence. They sell a lot of corporate travel. So it's going to be interesting, and that's why I continue to love covering this industry as much as this situation is somewhat painful for all of us. And Jeff, I want to thank you for taking the time once again to this second session that we're having with you on the impact COVID-19 is having on travel law and travel in general.
Thank you so much for having me. Stay healthy.
I will, and hopefully maybe we'll look forward to another column from you farther on, or maybe we'll do another one of these, depending on what happens. But
I'll try to get one to you in the next few weeks.
Okay.
I've been working on putting all my classes online for the fall. It's taken a lot of time.
Yeah, well, we're all working seemingly harder than ever sometimes with what's going on. Again, Jeff, best to your family, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much.
I'm James Shillinglaw, and this is Insider Travel Report.